Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tech Talk. Today, we are going to talk about cloud and cloud computing. Um, we are here today. I'm Rinat, and Amit is here with us. We both have worked with cloud infrastructure, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk about all the things that we know and all the things we've experienced over the years in our work experiences. And yeah, it's one of the very essential topics to know about in IT. And in recent days, in the past few years or in the last decade, I would say cloud computing has become really popular because of all the different benefits it has over on-premise infrastructure. Obviously, we're going to discuss all of them today. In terms of cloud computing, obviously, um, in IT, we come across a lot of terms which has a different meaning before. For example, Windows or net. It used to be a net to catch fish, but now when we say net, we mean something completely different. Cloud computing is something similar. I mean, obviously, cloud is a word that had another day-to-day meaning before, but which that meaning still exists. But when we talk about cloud computing, we talk about something specific where the computing or the infrastructure or the technology is actually um, stored somewhere else, not not at your real life premises. So that's where the name cloud computing comes from, because just like cloud is stored somewhere else. You can probably see it from far away, the location, like you can see the cloud, but it's not directly on your premises. But yeah, let's get into details and find out all about cloud computing. Amit, thank you for joining us, and yeah, it's a good idea from you that we decided to talk about cloud computing. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. What do you think of cloud computing, Amit?
Thank you, Rinat. Yeah, that was a very good introduction. I think cloud computing it is one of the greatest computing achievements in recent times after the internet and the personal computer because it has transformed the way we now run businesses. And especially because most of the businesses are run using software. And COVID has actually accelerated the adoption of cloud technology and the movement from on-premise to cloud computing because a lot of companies realize that they cannot run their businesses in the same way they used to because people are at home and they need access to services, and the only way they can access those services is via the internet. So they decided that okay, we need to quickly get on the cloud to uh, help our customers reach our services. So in recent times, we hear three big names: AWS, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform (GCP). And they are the three big key players in the cloud industry. But I mean, before we start all that, we need to understand what is a cloud. Why are we talking so much about it? So I mean, Rinat, you gave a good introduction. Can you explain what do you understand about cloud and what your idea of a cloud is?
Sure, sure. So that's exactly where I was going with this. I usually try to break down the term and what each of the word means. So as soon as I try to do that with cloud computing, the word cloud obviously means something completely different to people from my generation. So yeah, when I think of cloud, that's the first thing I think about. That it's not something right in front of us. It's obviously the name comes from the cloud that is in the sky. So, and also even in technology, when we talk about cloud computing, the icon that is used is also an icon of a cloud, a real life cloud, what this represent is the location of the service or infrastructure or software, whatever we're talking about. The location is not right in front of you, not physically at,
Yes.
at in in front of you, or at look, it's not located at your infrastructure. If you have a a computer with desktop, or if you have a network of computer, say for example in your office, etc. But if you are trying to access a certain set of data, or a certain application, or a certain infrastructure like a virtual machine, etc., if they're not located in your office or in your sort of IT infrastructure in front of you, like you can't physically touch it, then obviously that is somehow similar to it being in a place which is being in a faraway place, which is in the cloud. And most of the time, if it is not in at your premises, then the way you connect to it is over the internet. And it, it is kind of synonymous that it's going, it's getting, the data or the services coming from far away from the sky, because it's coming from the internet. So that's how the name, I think, sort of came about, of cloud computing. So yeah, I mean, what I understand, that's kind of my understanding how the name came about. But overall, what I understand is, you need various things in IT. You either need an application that is designed and programmed by a company, for example, or you might need an infrastructure, for example, a virtual set of virtual machines to carry out your work, or you might need, I don't know, platform, for example. You need databases and things that would help you build a platform. So all of these things could be costly for you to create this whole detailed infrastructure in your office space, etc. And obviously now with what we experienced last year, the pandemic, everyone wants to be able to access everything remotely. With that, the need to access things remotely and not have to have things physically present in your office is more, more important. And the need is increased. So to allow for all of this, to you need to connect to something that will give you all of these services remotely. And cloud computing allows for all of this. And as you mentioned, the top three, there are top three, and there are other service providers like that as well. These companies enable you to get all of these services remotely. They locate there all of these services in the cloud, which then you can connect to and get the services that you need.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Like it's not here, it's not in front of you, it's not something that you can physically touch. It's somewhere out there. So it's out. So
Mhm.
somewhere out there. So they said, okay, cloud. But another interesting analogy that I want to share from my own experience is that it's something that you can rent. So on-premise hardware, where you actually host your software. So a lot of companies are built around software these days, and those softwares are hosted on a piece of hardware. So, and those hardware normally is nothing but a server. So a server serves the web page. So whenever you type google.com, it's you actually contact a computer that has the page hosted on it, or a copy of the page, and it tries to serve you the page. And that's a server. Now, in old times, the server used to be hosted within the company. Then they came up with the concept of a virtual machine, which is on the server, but it's inside a virtual machine. And but they had to maintain all that. So they had to purchase the hardware, they had to secure the hardware, they had to update the hardware, take backups if anything is a problem, and all those other capital expense, as they call it. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
generating any revenue for you, but it's an expense, and it's called a capital expense or capex. So now what happens is this is something that you own, but you don't want the hassle of ownership. So you look out for how to rent it. And AWS, Amazon Web Service, or Amazon first came out with cloud. And the reason they came out with is because they were already having big, large computers and large servers, and they were dealing with, so much data that they had spare computers or servers lying around. And they thought, okay, let's rent it out. Let's rent it out and see. And that's how it started. So they started renting out their servers, and they told the businesses that, see, we will buy the hardware, we will make sure that the hardware is updated, it is secured, it is patched. If anything breaks, we will repair it or replace it. So we will take care of that. What you do is you host your application on our hardware, and for that we will charge you, and we will only charge you for what you use. We will, if you don't use our hardware uh, for say read or write operation, then we will not charge you. So if you want 10 computers, we'll give you 10 computers and you pay us for that. If you need one computer, you pay us for that. So based on demand, you can scale up and down, and that's where the word elastic in all the Amazon services come, because you can actually decide what you want to do with the servers, and how do you want to scale up or down. And that's essentially it. So you can rent a house or buy a house. So similarly, you can own your piece of hardware which is on premise, or you can rent a piece of hardware which is cloud computing. So that's my understanding.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, this, as just from your description, it just becomes so much clear the how much beneficial it is for the potential customer. As you said, 10 computers. If I wanted to, start my own business and have, I have to now know how many employees I'm going to hire and how many machines I'm going to need for all of them, and then over
Yes.
time I might not need all say for example 10 machines, but I have to still own them, I have to maintain them, and I have to maintain the underlying infrastructure, the database, the server, and all of that. But with cloud computing I don't have to do any of that, and as you said, because it's elastic, I can just scale down if my business is not doing very well for a period of time, and then scale up straight away with a click of a button within minutes to accommodate for a bigger
Exactly.
infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why it's so powerful and so relevant, because businesses don't want the hassle of this, the capital expense. Of course,
Yeah.
it has operational expense. As you're running it, you keep paying the cost. So a lot of analysis has been done whether hosting on your own premise, owning the hardware is cheaper, or actually running in the cloud is cheaper. And plus the the main concern for people is security. If I'm hosting on someone else's server, especially banks are very skeptical. They have large amount of customer and financial data, and they are worried that if I host all this data on someone else's server, they actually kind of own it. So how do we secure
Ah,
the data on those servers, right? So essentially, the
yeah.
servers are owned by, say, Amazon or Google or Microsoft, and the data is lying there. But how do we make sure that it's secure? And because you connect to their servers via the internet, someone else can also connect via the internet to their servers and hack it, right? So the
Yes.
data
Yes.
breach is also a big concern, and that's why a lot of banks were very skeptical initially whether to host on cloud. But sooner they realized that no, they are very secure platforms. But yeah, so that's how it evolved. But this is a good example of the for the skeptics. Like I don't want to get into cloud because it's not secure.
Also, there's always that the emotional aspect of it. If I can't say, for example, I use cloud computing for my own data storage as well, to a degree, but there is a external hard drive which I still have, which is where I have an offline backup. I don't know, a monthly or a quarterly offline backup. I do keep that, and this is less to do with I think technology, but more to do with that, human emotional decision making. Where, if I can see the data, the hard drive I have is a physical hard drive, I can look at it, I can touch it, and that gives me a sense of comfort, and I know that it's offline, it's not connected to anything, and I'm not going to lose it unless there is a like a physical disaster of some sort. It can't be sort of hacked or be
Yes.
accessed by anyone. I don't. So yeah, there are some benefits, and also there are some motivations to use physical
Yes.
infrastructure as well. But with all the benefits that you can get from cloud computing, and also because security is an issue, or it has been an issue, and one of the first things that people questioned. So because of that, businesses that provide cloud services like Amazon or Microsoft, they really ramped up the security. So they have implemented security that would be not that would be not worth spending that amount of money if you were if you want to achieve the same level of security in your own on-premise infrastructure. So it's they really went for it, and they wanted to make sure that the security is at the topmost priority when it
Yes.
comes to cloud.
Yes. So Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they talk about security quite a lot. But there's, I think, still one misconception that just because these platforms are secure, your website will be secure. No, it's not that. These platforms provide a platform to the
Yes.
users, business users, or companies, organizations, individual people like us, a, a place to run our software or host our software. But all the configuration, someone has to do it. So,
Yes.
so a lot of times you hear these stories where the uh, uh, the data from one particular organization has leaked from the cloud, but it's not that it's because AWS or Google or Microsoft is at fault. It's because they didn't use the policies defined by these organizations to secure the content, and that's why the data got leaked. So one has to be really
Yes.
careful that okay, these platforms are very secure, but you need to configure it.
Absolutely, and then there's the other thing as well. I mean, it's like the bank. Say you have a bank account with a very renowned bank, but shared your credit card details online. So the bank is very secure. I mean, there no one's gonna like hack into the bank server and take money from you. But if you give out your details that you're supposed to, the weakness is usually on your end rather than the bank's end. And obviously, it could happen, very unlikely scenario. But yeah, that's the thing. When we talk about security or some sort of security break, we need to actually think about, there are number of parties involved in a whole system, and which is the weak link is and which aspect was being hacked. For example, as you mentioned, like, yeah, it provides a platform. I want to build a website. I take hosting from a cloud hosting provider, and then I have that amount of storage dedicated for me. Now if I create a WordPress website, and then I use a not very secure password to get as the admin password of my WordPress website, then that has nothing to do with the hosting provider, because hosting provider gave me a space, and I password protected that space. Now if my password wasn't strong enough, or some hacker with some social engineering figured out what my first pet was, and then figured out my password, then that's not nothing on the hosting provider, because I have failed to securely secure that bit of
Absolutely.
space. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's this another example I want to give is we talk about two-factor authentication. So you have the SMS and then you have the code that you can use on Google Authenticator, and there are these apps which generate these time coded values, and you use this to log into your website apart from your username and password. Now, what happens is people think that okay, just using this is security, but they fail to realize that you have to actually go to that secure website. And there are these phishing scams where you'll have google.com, but the O would be replaced by zero, and you won't pay attention. It would look everything the same, and it would be secure and everything, and you are giving your code onto a website that is not Google. and
Yeah.
and and this is the crazy part, because two-factor authentication, everything is secure, but you have gone actually to a fake website, a scam website, and it has now taken your credentials, got access to your code, and now you have given them the power to change and steal your data. And this is what users have to be careful about when they think about cloud or any other computing platform, that okay, security is your responsibility, even though the companies or organizations that provide these services make sure that your data is secure.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, what you said, that actually happened to a close friend of mine as well. It's
Okay.
just, yeah, it's just ridiculous how, these scammers are, and then they have now become more and more sophisticated. So it's
Yes.
more and more difficult to identify these attacks. And yeah, they now meticulously create kind of tailored emails which are actually very realistic. I mean, they mention names which they somehow they figured out from your contact list and stuff like that. So it's nowadays they've become very realistic, and yeah, definitely worth being careful to
Absolutely.
avoid this. Yeah.
Yes. So, coming back to cloud computing,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about okay, why the companies need this, and the advantages. So it gives organizations the flexibility, but it also gives organization a cost advantage, because owning a piece of hardware means it will get outdated after a few years. It will get upgraded by a new processor, new hard disk space, better hard disk technology, better computational power, and better hardware, etc., etc. So the moment you buy a piece of hardware, you know that okay, it'll get outdated, say within 5 to 10 years, and you will have to upgrade it. So there's a lot of upfront cost for a company to start a business, especially the one where they have to provide a service to a customer or a consumer. But with cloud, what they all they need to do is go to AWS, go to Azure, go to GCP, buy the infrastructure, immediately just rent it out and start hosting your services on it. And that's the
Yes.
beauty, I mean, you don't have to actually worry about okay, where will I host it, how will I manage it, all those things. No, just go buy, rent it out, pay on an hourly basis or use basis, and then yeah, that's it. So it's
Yeah.
so much convenient for organizations now to get onto the cloud, because the upfront cost of uh, using a cloud service is quite less, but for a on-premise, upfront cost is quite high.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many benefits of using cloud computing. You don't need to. I mean, by renting out on infrastructure online, you're also not having to rent out a physical space in your infrastructure. So you don't need an office like a data center to keep all of your data and infrastructure either. Yeah, they're like, if you start listing all the benefits of cloud computing, yeah, there will be a lot. And yeah, it nowadays it's kind of widely accepted that what is more beneficial. So there's no point exploring or debating whether or not it's beneficial. Let's now find out how can we make the most out of cloud computing rather than whether to use it or not.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Mm.
So, I mean, when we talk about cloud computing, we need to understand few concepts. Uh, so, concepts like what is a server, what is a server rack, what is a data center. So normally server is something which is like your CPU. So when you buy a desktop computer, so you get a CPU and you attach a keyboard, mouse, and monitor to the CPU, and then you use your computer. So think of a server. So think of your server as a CPU, and it's just a server. There is no monitor attached to it. There is no keyboard or mouse, and it comes like a flat pack. So it's like a flat pack of furniture, and you have a server like that. And then if you have servers stacked on top of each other, it becomes a rack. So you have now a rack of multiple servers. And when you have multiple racks, then you put that into a big location which is called a data center. So a data center has a lot of server racks, and each server rack has a lot of servers. And that's what AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, they are selling. They are selling uh, the services or the infrastructure on those servers. So so it means that on those servers you can run a virtual machine, and you can run multiple virtual machines. So suppose Rinat wants to buy or Rinat wants to run his website rinatmalik.com on Microsoft Azure, and Amit also wants to run his own website amitsarkar.tech on Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft Azure will not allocate the entire server to Rinat and Amit separately. They will say, okay, fine, we will just use one server. We'll create two virtual machines. One virtual machine we will give it to Rinat, and the other virtual machine we will give it to Amit. And then we will run all their website, the server software, the database, the front end application on those virtual machines. And then we will serve the content from those virtual machines to everyone on the internet. But now it's like a shared platform. So on the same server, we have now we have different virtual machines, and you can have multiple virtual machines up to a certain limit based on the memory and the hard disk of the particular server and the processing power. So I mean, this is a basic concept. Okay, this is what you are trying to hire, and this is what you are trying to um, um, like rent from these cloud providers.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So let's talk about, different services that we can get from cloud computing. I don't know what you would call it, the types of services, or I mean, most of the things that we get. Like, I mean, whenever you have an IT infrastructure altogether, there are usually three things. Like, you use application, or you use the actual machine, the virtual machine, and you use like a platform,
Yes,
um,
yes,
or some or tools that enable you to create a platform, etc. So that kind of, you could say three things. These three things are, rented out as a service from these cloud companies. So, application, and platform, and software as a service, SaaS,
yes.
platform as a service, PaaS, and infrastructure as a service, IA.
Ah, yes.
IaaS. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, well,
So, from what I read, and I read this very recently, I'll share the article which I read, and it's really good. It explains the concepts very well. So, the article says, and it takes a very good analogy. So,
mhm.
you can buy a piece of land and then build a house on it, or you can buy a house or rent a house. So you can rent a land, sorry, let's not buy it, because buy means on premise. So you're on the cloud. So you rent a piece of land and you grow crops, or you build something on it. Okay. Or you buy a rented, so you rent a house and that is unfurnished. So you don't have any piece of furniture. You have got the house, but there is no furniture in it. And the third option is you rent a house, it's fully furnished. So it's ready to use. You don't have to buy anything. Okay. Now, let's compare the three things that you defined. Infrastructure as a service. So, it's like renting a piece of land. It means you've just got computing power. So, the cloud computing platform on which you're planning to host your um, website or services or whatever, they will say, okay, you can buy some CPU, you can buy some hard disk space, you can buy some memory space, RAM, and then you can run a virtual machine on it. So that's all you get. So that's your infrastructure. So it's a piece of land. It doesn't help you to build a network. It doesn't help you to configure everything. It gives you all the tools, but then you have to do everything by yourself. So you have to first create a virtual machine, create multiple virtual machines, install your server, install your database, have your firewall, so no one outside your virtual machine or your system can access your software. And then you have to provide network rules like, okay, people on from this IP have access, people from that IP don't have access. So all those networking concepts and configuration you have to do manually. You have to take backups, you have to define when to scale up, scale down, etc., etc. So it's a lot of work. So that's infrastructure as a service. You only provide the infrastructure, you only provide the land. Now we come to platform. So platform could be something like a database. So I don't want to create my own database. I want a database software already there on the machine which I can immediately use. So the next thing we want to talk about is platform as a service. So platform as a service is nothing but a database on the infrastructure, or a server software on an infrastructure. So you don't have to worry about installing. So they give you some basic application, a server, a database, things that you want to use, um, uh, which are the essential part of running any business. And they provide some configuration setups, pre-configured setups, etc. So that's platform as a service. Um, uh, so
And that's like
infrastructure as a service is something that you can immediately buy even as a consumer. Platform as a service is something like Heroku, Heroku. Heroku is a very famous platform as a service. Netlify, and there are other tools in the market as well. And what you can do is you can host your application and they'll provide the basic things. And then the last bit is software as a service, which is nothing but a completely furnished apartment which you have now rented. So this means it has everything that you need to run your business. So an example would be Salesforce. Salesforce provides a platform to run your entire business, and they have everything that you need. So you just need to start configuring and creating stuff and populating it. These are the three main examples: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And there are different other services that you can provide, but I think these are the three essential ways you can use the cloud computing platforms for your own benefit.
That's actually a really good analogy, Amit. I mean, I really like the land and the house and the furnished apartment situation. That actually helps me. I mean, obviously I knew what cloud computing and each of these services were, but now I can actually visualize it quite well with that analogy. Thanks. And yeah, it actually fits really well because the level of detail you want to get into or level of things you want to do is each of these things enable you to do different things, different level of it helps you achieve different level of services or things that you want to do in your business, etc.
Exactly.
Cool.
And
Mm.
the other thing people have to remember is that these platforms, they provide you with a lot of services. So you can run almost anything on these servers. You can run a virtual machine, you can run containers, you can run container orchestration softwares, you can run databases, you can run your own server on those servers on a virtual machine. So you can run a front-end website, a static website, anything. You can actually host your content, so just files, videos, images, etc., anything. But the thing that people normally are not very careful about is they end up configuring the way they configure their on-premise hardware. So you have to now remember everything is hosted across in a data center, and you are communicating it via the internet. And these softwares, they are optimized for performance, scalability, and security. So you have to actually follow certain guidelines and principles which the cloud providers uh, uh, mention on their websites, that okay, use these services in this way and you will get the maximum benefit. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you configure the hardware like the way you configure your hardware in your own organization, then what happens is that you end up getting a huge bill from these cloud providers, and then you think, okay, these cloud providers are very expensive, when actually they are not that expensive. It's just that you have configured it incorrectly. If you configure it correctly, then it means that you can run your services efficiently and with less cost. And over a period of time, the cost benefit is huge when running on a cloud.
Yes, yes. I mean, it is also, yeah, as you mentioned, it's important to keep an eye on the cost because, yeah, I mean, they obviously gives you a cost plan or a price plan that can be modified or that can be kind of tailor made or bespoke to your organization's need. But it's important that you sort of communicate that specific need while you are building the things. Like for example, in Azure services, if you rent out VMs, if you're not running them, then you're not going to be charged. But
Yes.
if you have a system which doesn't auto shut down after a few hours of unused time, or every night, or at a certain point, then obviously you're losing out and you're running those VM 24/7. And Microsoft is obviously enabling you. They if you left it running, they obviously made sure that it is running. Of
Yes.
course, that's what they should be doing, and but that incurs cost. So yeah, absolutely, these configurations are very important, and is worth looking into, worth spending the time on doing the right configuration. That will save a lot of money in the long run.
Yes, exactly. So it's very important that we adhere to the guidelines. So whenever you use any software, you always go through the documentation in order to best use it. So similarly, you try to talk to the consultants or the engineers at AWS or Microsoft Azure or the GCP team to understand how best to use the platform. The other thing I want to mention is the sometimes people actually get confused with what cloud is. So suppose a company like Google, they decide to host their services on AWS. Okay, they decide to host their services on Amazon's data centers, but Google also runs its own data center. So now there is a confusion. There are two data centers, and we thought that okay, cloud is basically a data center. But one data center is owned by Google, and the other data center is owned by Amazon. And but both can be contacted via the internet. So now what happens? Now what happens is the consumer or a user like me gets confused. Okay, so they are both cloud, but one is owned by Google. They are running their own services, and one is this. So is there a difference? There is actually a difference, and the difference is called private and public cloud. A private cloud is a data center owned by your company, and it is private. So only people within your organization can access to that cloud. And a public cloud is a cloud that anyone in the world can access. And that's like AWS, Google, GCP, Azure, etc. So people should not get confused with these concepts. There is a public cloud, there is a private cloud, and it's important to know that.
Yes, absolutely. And this actually brings a very interesting question. I mean, obviously, I know the answer to that, or I have a version in my head of what the answer might be. But tell me this: if a company is spending their own money and all of effort and everything to create their own private cloud infrastructure, then why not instead have everything on premise? I mean, if they are gonna own their own infrastructure anyway, why make it far away? Why not in their office? I mean, isn't it the same thing, just, far away?
It is the same thing, but some people choose to do that because of security and some government regulations. Like the governments of certain countries, they don't want to host their data. So suppose Indian government doesn't want to host their data in a US data center, something like that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
then there might be a case where you won't want to have a private cloud. What do you think is the other reason?
So I mean, there are other. I thought of a few other reasons, but actually, I mean, yeah, what you mentioned, the security. I've actually known that there is a law in US, that if any data, or if any, and like, when you send an email, or whenever you communicate, the data packet actually goes through different countries, jumps from different, takes different routes, and then it ends up at your endpoint, right? And then,
Yes,
because US, had is one of the first adopters of internet to begin with, um, it's very likely that all of the data packets at one point in its journey will pass through some, US server, or data center. And I think there is a law of some sort of restriction that if it has passed through an US, infrastructure, then US have some sort of right to it, or they
yes,
can
yes,
implement,
yes,
they can sort of, yeah. So as a result, of course, there would be there is a need for all the other countries to make sure that their data does not go through any US channels, or at least make, they will need to make sure that it stays within, especially like, very sensitive data, like, for the defense system of the country, etc.,
yes,
etc.
etc.
So absolutely, there is that need to do that. There are other benefits as well. I mean, the scaling up and scaling down things, and then, for example, I mean, say for example, you have, I don't know, a company with 1,000 employees, um, and instead of buying 1,000 really good, spec, computer
Machines,
with
yes,
money machines, everything, and maintaining that physically is a lot harder than creating a centralized data center where all the information is stored, as well as the computing power is also stored there. And you just have thin clients, to all of the users who can access everything straight away. And for example, this is again really important now with our working from home culture. So if you had all these 1,000 machines, all set up on premise in an office space, how would you work remotely now? You know,
yes,
right now, obviously, with our current situation, working from home has become mandatory for businesses to run and continue generating value, etc. And employees now have to work from home. And even before the pandemic, it was good to have, part of your weekly work, you know carrying out from home. There was certain benefits to it, and people did used to do that. And cloud computing would enable, your employees to do that. And it's not just working from home. Even, like, say for example, your employees are going to a, I don't know, business conference away from work, but they still need to access, work infrastructure to carry out, and make progress on their projects, etc. So that these kind of things are enabled by, private cloud computing data center.
yes. I mean, access to data, I think, is very critical now because you want to be able to access your data from any platform, your mobile, your computer, your laptop at home, your laptop in office, when you're traveling in the train or a bus, you need to have access to your data, and cloud gives you that flexibility. I worked in an organization and they were doing their digital transformation, and their main challenge was they were running a piece of software that had all the customer data, but they didn't have access to it outside the office. So it means that when they are in a meeting outside at a client, they don't have access to the data, the company data that they need and at their fingertips, and they were very and they were not able to scale their business to that extent, and they thought, okay, we need to move to a different provider on the cloud, whereby we can access that information from our phone, from our laptop, over the internet. We don't actually have to be in office physically to get access to that data. And
Yes.
yeah, this is much needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so there are many, many benefits of cloud computing. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean there are all of these types that you explained of different types of services you can get from cloud computing. We also touched upon benefits. I mean, there's no point listing all the benefits because there are so many.
Yes.
We would so yeah, I mean
There are applications, but there are applications that people are actually may not be aware. They might be aware, they may not be aware. So a crucial example is Netflix. Everyone watches Netflix, and everyone has at least a subscription of Amazon Prime. So they have subscription to
mhm.
Amazon Prime Video. Now they're both hosted on AWS. These are two competing organizations, and Amazon Prime is owned by Amazon. So I'm certain that it's hosted on AWS. Netflix is also hosted on AWS. Two competing platforms hosted on this. And it's incredible that how they have managed to stay in competition, providing relevant content to the users, and using shared services. So it's incredible the way you can use a cloud computing platform. Now there are softwares uh, which help you run a server, a database, etc. And you don't even have to go anywhere. So Google gives you the option to buy a domain from them, host services on their platform, and you can do end to end just on Google. And similarly, Amazon does that. I'm not sure about Microsoft, but I'm guessing Microsoft would also help you buy a domain and then host your
Mhm.
server on their cloud platform. And the advantage of, again, the cloud computing platform is because it's scalable. It means that if you're hosting something and then suddenly there is a huge user demand. So currently you serve the page to 1,000 users, but suddenly there is a huge demand and 1 million users want access to your website. You don't have to worry. The cloud will take care. It will scale automatically. So it'll create a
Yes.
copy, it'll do the load balancing, it'll do everything for you. So you don't have to worry. So those applications are quite important and relevant. So having access to your data from anywhere in the world, having the power to scale your systems based on the demand, having the option to rent the piece of hardware or the platform that you want to use and pay only for that part, not own it, but just rent it and pay only for what you use. I think this gives a lot of flexibility to a lot of organizations, and it's yeah, it's good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so yeah, I mean, we've actually explored a lot about cloud computing. We talked about the different types of service you can get, benefits, and also different applications.
Yes.
I think this is a comprehensive uh, a talk to know about cloud computing. I definitely urge the listeners and viewers to go out there, Google some more, and find out more about cloud computing. If you have any further questions, definitely reach out to us, ask the questions, and we're going to try and answer them in our next episode. So yeah, I mean, it is a very essential thing to know about in terms of also, in terms of getting job or start a career. You could do various certification offered by Microsoft Azure services or AWS. I'm sure there are other training courses available as well, and these training courses will enable you to understand these technology as well as sort of navigate around it. Will teach you how to, say, for example, create a VM or create an infrastructure that a company can use. And these have very, lucrative and very good job opportunities that you can get by being trained on these kind of things. So yeah, definitely would encourage the listeners and viewers to find out more. Maybe this is an area of expertise for you. It's not too difficult. It's actually, an easy topic to understand and become an expert on. So yeah, definitely check it out, find out more, and ask us questions. With that, I think we've covered a lot on cloud computing today. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Amit, to
I
today's
think
talk?
you have covered quite a lot, but yes, you are right. Cloud computing is a very simple concept, and once you understand it and you get the fundamentals right, it's easy to understand what's happening behind the scene. Because if you go now to use, say, AWS or Microsoft Azure or GCP, the three big cloud computing platforms, you will notice so many services that they provide. But if you understand the basics, then it's easy for you to know, okay, what am I looking for? Am I trying to build a network? Am I trying to run a software? Am I trying to build a database? So am I trying to run a virtual machine? What do I need? So based on that, you can find a particular service. And if you understand the basics, then it's easy to navigate through their ecosystem. But of course, we will try to share as many URLs as possible at the end of the video to help you understand what it is. The analogy that I gave about the piece of land, I'll share the link to that as well, because I think the person explained it really well. Uh, I wanted to share actually one interesting thing about the backup. Rinat mentioned about
Yeah.
taking a backup. So you have, say, a backup on OneDrive or Google Drive, which normally a lot of people do nowadays, and you normally try to take a backup in a piece of hard disk that you own and you keep. But there is a principle of data backup. You always have three copies of the data: one on the cloud, anywhere in the world, one with you physically, and one at a location that you know about and you have access to, where you have a copy of the data. The reason being, if you ever get flooded, if you have an earthquake, if you have a burglary, and if you lose data from the cloud or from your home, then at least you have the third option as a backup. So these are that's a fundamental rule of backup. uh, have a copy. And don't worry, in cloud computing, the platforms, they give you the option to take snapshots of what you're storing and hosting, so you can take backups, and you can let those platforms know to take backups regularly. So take your backups.
So that's an interesting question. I mean, we should actually do another conversation on just backups and stuff and all the things available. But yeah, speaking of what you just mentioned, what should be the frequency? I mean, this is from my own curiosity because I don't have that third one, but I have the first two as you mentioned. But backing up itself is a bit of a time consuming, and it does take some effort. So the what should be the frequency, because if I wanted to do the third kind of backup, if I do it every year, then obviously I'm if on 11th month I've already accumulated a lot of data which hasn't been backed up. But also if I wanted to do it every month, then having access to that third location, which is intentionally difficult, um it becomes kind of cumbersome, and one starts to question whether it's worth
Yes.
it.
So the simple, keep it simple is normally the concept of whenever you approach anything, and that is, keep it with your family member. Say,
Hmm.
if they are living in the same city, keep it with them. So at least you have another copy. And regarding the frequency, you have to think about what data you're trying to back up. Is it personal information like usernames and passwords, which I don't think you need to back up every day.
Hmm. No.
Once a year is good, once a month is good, depending upon how frequently you change them. So it depends on how the frequency in which you change or access your data. So things like that, you don't have to take a backup regularly. But things like photographs, if you take a lot of photos every single day, then I'm pretty sure that you are already taking backups of the photos on your phone, the photos from your camera, etc., etc. So those backups are again crucial. So if you are taking backups, if you're photographing, say, frequently in a month, take a backup every month because it's important so that you don't lose those photos. If you take videos, so like me and Renat, we are recording these videos. We take a backup each. Renat has a copy, I have a copy, and we have a copy in the cloud. So we already have three copies of that data in three different machines. That's a good example, right? And we don't have to take a backup every single day because it's now through a cloud platform on our local machine. We have access to that data. But this is just to give you an analogy. So depending upon the data, you decide on the frequency. Some data would need frequent backups, some data won't need frequent backups. And plus, when you're taking backups, you actually need to minimize the amount of data you need to backup, because the thing is, on
Yeah.
cloud platforms you will actually run out of space. So suppose you own a lot of DVDs and you copy the DVDs onto your machine, and now you have like 100 GB or 1 terabyte of DVDs on your machine. You don't want to take a backup of those things. You can quickly rent it. You can quickly find something online. You can rent it from Amazon Prime Video, Google Video, etc., etc. So there are renting platforms. So you don't want to rent your store your videos as a backup. What you want to do is personal photos and personal information, your tax returns, your salary records, your bank statements. Those are critical files, not everything else.
Cool. Okay, this is good information to know. Thanks. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot more to add either. I'm just going to add one last thing before we finish. If anyone, you don't have to be an expert or know anything. Anyone can go and open an account on Azure services. With the free account, it comes with quite a decent amount of credit, and that credit, it's not like various softwares and other service provider gives you like a 30-day trial and that kind of stuff to test out their services. But Azure, I don't actually know about AWS, so I won't
They
comment. But I
they
know,
they they all have a free tier. Every cloud platform has a free tier, and
yeah,
in the description we will mention the URL where the free tier is actually mentioned. So AWS, Microsoft, and GCP, they all have a free tier where you can use their services up to a certain limit, and then they will start charging you. But that free tier is
yes,
good
yes.
enough for you to explore their services.
Of course, yeah. So that's the free tier. But what I know of Azure is that instead of giving you like a 30-day free trial of finding out what their services are, they give you a number of credits, say £200 or $200, or a number of amounts in whichever country
I
you're
think
accessing
I
from.
think Google also does that and AWS also does it. So if you
Ah,
sign up with
great.
a new email ID, it'll give you access to their services for a year or up to the time you run out of your credits.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a decent amount of credit for you to try a lot of things that are
Yes,
provided within their services. You could create a VM and run it for a number of times. You could, create and destroy various infrastructure features and components, and then try how you did it, and then destroy it, then rebuild it. And this is a really good way to learn and be familiarized with all these technology that are on offer. So that's the other thing I would say, encourage the listeners and viewers to just go and open a free account and just play with it. It is free, and you would actually be able to, because it's credit system, there is nothing restricted. You are treated as if you are a paid customer. They just gave you some free credit in your account, just like if a paid customer would buy those credits. So everything that you'll see are used in real life when you're actually building an actual infrastructure. So this is a really good learning environment. Yeah, please do use up all of those credits, and that in by doing so you would learn a lot and be familiarized with the technology and what they have to offer.
absolutely. And one of the key things I want to tell our viewers and listeners is that don't fuss about the cloud computing platform. Most of the, all the cloud computing platforms provide a similar level of service. They just use a different term. So understand the concept. Don't worry about whether I want to go to Azure, GCP, or AWS. Look at the cost, look at the quality of service, and then decide which platform you want to use. But the principles remain the same. They are all talking about servers, a CPU, a hard disk, some memory, some services like a database, servers, etc. So once you know the concepts, it's actually easy to use this. So know the concepts, don't get bogged down by the different terminologies and comparisons, because yeah, if you know the basics, then it's easy to navigate.
Absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, all of the top service providers are top for a reason, and that's because they do provide, good service for even large enterprises to build upon. So, yeah, great. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to us and watching our videos. So we hope you continue to do so with our next episodes that are coming up. Yeah, please again feel free to reach out with any questions you have, or if you think that your expertise could help the rest of the listeners and viewers, please contact us to come to our show as a guest. Yeah, so. Thanks again for joining.
We hope you're enjoying our talks, and we are trying to keep it as simple as possible, which you can easily understand. And I hope that we are keeping the topics relevant as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching and listening.
Thank you, guys.